skills that you think are really trending in terms of what matters most to employers?
Yeah, thanks, Hazel. And it's really reassuring for me to hear what Aisling is saying, because all of those skills that she's describing, they're all embedded in the courses that we run, which is you're sort of getting an awful lot of bang for your buck, when you go into further education. So ultimately, what we're finding, we work an awful lot with recruiters and with industry experts to find out, what is at the future of work right now? What are people looking for? So that we design our courses that are responsive to the market needs. And that's very important to us. And what we do consistently see time and time again is that soft skills never go out of fashion. Your communication, your time management skills, collaboration, innovation, creativity, these are all core skills that have always been a fundamental part of being ready for the workplace. And especially now at the moment, I know we were talking earlier on, myself and Mark, about development of new programs in AI. And I think there's this fear at the moment, and it's always been the fear that when there's a big leap in technology, that there's a fear that jobs are going to go by the wayside. But actually, it's quite the opposite, in that as technology develops, the development of those core skills becomes more and more important. And so what we're seeing is that, yes, there is a development of technology, but at the same time, that human interaction piece is becoming more important than ever. And again, those soft skills are at the core of all of the courses that we run. So it's the old classics, we would say. It's all of those soft skills. They're never going to not be needed, and arguably more so than ever before now.
Excellent. And Mark, would you have anything to add on kind of the evergreen skills, maybe, or would you have a differing opinion on what matters?
The thing about it, I suppose, definitely the digital native bit is very important. And I think to add to that point, I would say, with the wealth of knowledge on the internet now these days, it's very easy to find out what kind of softwares are in the industry that you may be looking to get into, to look it up and see if you can utilize it, to see if you can download it and get best practice on it as well, which would be very, very important, I think, as well. The other side of it as well, I think, is very important for the future of work, is to be quite flexible and adaptable to the market changes. I mean, we were just talking about ChatGPT, which is this new AI algorithm that's in play now. I've already integrated it into my business with my team. It's going to affect every industry, but don't stick your head in the sand about this stuff. Really just get involved with it as well and get accustomed to it and get used to it. And this is only the start of it, So I think it's very, very important to be flexible. If you're going back to work as well, especially after a long break, perhaps you need to be very flexible in the sense of you could have a boss who's 10 years your junior and all that too. So that adaptability part is very, very important as well. But I think all those things put together certainly will be very helpful. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. And I think that's something that's inbuilt into our courses around kind of being uncomfortable with discomfort and being productively challenged, and we'd kind of hard bake those into our courses. So that's great. Thank you for that. And then I would also know, when we think about pioneering your career, people are working longer into their lives, and actually, further education courses, they're kind of 10 a penny, and everyone is upskilling and returning to work and diversifying what they do, and they maybe even have a side hustle. So, but what we would often see is people who hope to pivot coming through our doors. So I might ask you, Mark, just as with many people considering a complete career change and looking at further study and the likes of ourselves here to enable that, what advice would you give to someone tuned in today who's considering a career move in terms of how to get ready for making that pivot?
Yeah, the big question. And I talk from my own perspective as well, even just to give an example. A few years ago, being in recruitment, Aisling just has to this, that I tried to maybe see if HR was something that I wanted to get into. So I actually went and did a HR diploma. Now, I'm not in HR now, so because I eventually realized when I was doing it that it wasn't really what I wanted to do, but it's still not lost on me. And even now I'm back doing a master's as well.
Okay.
So it's always about continuous learning all the time. It's one of the main things, I suppose, what they'd be looking for in that CV is that ability to be constantly growing and constantly learning. You can't just make that pivot into a new industry without attempting some aspect of education or re-education, because it's just too difficult, So how do you get that training to then jump into leapfrog, I suppose, into a job in the area you want to get into? But on the practical side, I have a few tips in terms of what else you can do. Certainly get on LinkedIn. You could go to anybody on LinkedIn and look at their profile in any industry and see what their trajectory was. Where did they come from? What education do they have? And that's free, and that's very easy to do. So I think that's one thing that's very, very key. I'd also as well go to any events or talks to do with the industry you're looking to get into as well. A lot of them tend to be free, especially now because of COVID. A lot of them tend to be online. So I definitely go to them. You might even strike up a conversation with someone who's already in the industry, you know, how Ireland works, you know, that could lead to, oh, you know, maybe you want to drop your CV in, or do you want another chat or a coffee? So that's all very important as well. I think that my takeaways. Yeah.
Excellent. We would see, like, across our courses, you know, I think we discussed this before the session today, that there's no one tangent student, and that they all have, you know, various different backgrounds, whether they're kind of would-be entrepreneurs, potentially they were an entrepreneur in a past life, they may have never received a level 9 qualification, have never gone to formal a third level institution, but yeah, that's something that they really benefit from, is the shared experience of being together in a room to simply network, especially post-COVID, because it's something that a lot of us might be rusty at, you know.
But even to add to that as well, like, you know, if you're going back to education, you probably have friends and family who are in certain industries. Like, talk to them, you know. They might know someone. Like, ask the question. Don't be shy, don't be too proud to ask person for help, like, because a lot of the time they'll help, you know.
Excellent.
On that, what Mark was saying about Ireland and the way we Ireland's so tiny, guys. These networking events are fantastic, and even remotely, you know, you can see attendees, or you can reach out to the organizer afterwards to kind of maybe make some connections. And that really is a great way of doing things and getting your name out there, especially if it's in a new industry, because you're not necessarily asking for a job immediately. You're maybe asking for some guidance, advice, and people are usually really happy to do that, especially when they're so excited about their own industry. Of course, they're going to want to share knowledge. So
excellent. And Jill, I can see you there chomping at the bit and saying, this is what I do. So how might you help a pivoter?
Well, it's the wonderful thing is that it happens quite organically within the courses. So it's very exciting and very busy week for us here in Tangent. We have 3 different postgraduate certificate courses beginning this week. I was at the opening night for one of them on Monday down in Kildare, one of our regional programs. And one of the things that we pride ourselves about when we develop out the courses that we run here is, if there's anybody watching who, you know, is considering a return to education, and when we think about third level education, most people will think of that very didactic, sitting in a lecture theatre, listening to information being imparted on you. And that's really, I can't say strongly enough, that's really not what we're about here, particularly in the first modules, which tend to be around innovation and creativity. So on Monday evening, Kildare group, wonderful group, in the space of 2 hours, we had delved into who everybody was in the class. And speaking about networks, the classes are such a phenomenal network in and of themselves. And we know from speaking to our graduates that their WhatsApp groups live on for a long time after they finish the course, and people continue to work with each other. You know, in Monday's group, we had 2 or 3 business owners, we had an animator, we had somebody who was looking to return to work. I mean, you learn so quickly how rich the skill set is. And I think that's one of the wonderful things as well about networking, especially within these courses, is that as adult learners, you are coming into the classroom, bringing such a wealth of experience. You may not think that you have a wealth of experience, but I promise you, when you start to pull apart, much the same, Aisling and Mark will be able to sit down with people and say, well, this experience means you can do X, Y, and Z. So whether it's a recruiter telling you or being, you know, helping you to discover that in the course, everybody coming in through the door has so much to give. And part of our job is to help people to articulate that and to speak about that. So yeah, it's something we're really proud of in the courses we run.
Excellent. And another kind of a commonality from what I've heard from our education team is that when people are considering a return to further education or a return to work for that matter, they often discount some experience that they've amassed potentially in the community, networking at the school gates, etc.
Absolutely.
So you know, you might have to kind of wake people up a bit to their experience that is nearly dormant and not present on their CV. So Aisling, would you have much experience?
You nearly have to remind people to value themselves, you know, and realize that if you've been off work raising a family, like, that's amazing. Do you know what I mean? So just as amazing as if you've been working for the past 10 years, you know. I think a lot of people, especially when it's a return to work after a long break, there's a massive fear of, what if I'm irrelevant? What if I've lost my skills? What if I'm just whatever I've become, you know? And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. And I try to be very transparent and I suppose, normal when I'm talking to people, and just acknowledge, like, listen, I understand. However, you've been doing loads of great work over the past decade. So let's talk about it. And then in my process of getting to know candidates, it's just about getting to know them on, like I would anyone, over a coffee. And when I'm tell me about yourself, I want to know, because a lot of the time they've been maybe volunteering, or they've been, you know, treasurer to their sons or daughters' football team. You know what I mean? They've got all these skills, like certain skills as well from an amazing career you might have previously held are not going to go out of style. Yes, you might need to upskill slightly on different systems if it's a technical skill, but the ability to deal with like senior leadership and stakeholders, like, you know, you don't just forget that overnight. So I certainly think there's an awful lot of stuff you can bring from your time off onto your CV that would be highly relevant and transferable into our professional world.
Excellent. And it really is a confidence piece then in that case, Aisling, where people need a kind of a gentle nudge in the right direction.
100%.
And I suppose in coming to you, they're showing that initiative, or to us ourselves here. So fantastic. And next on to so talent development. So obviously this is the remit of the world of HR quite often nowadays, you know, and there's kind of an expectation that employers will provide a certain level of training once you're ensconced in a role. And it's equally important in terms of retaining and nurturing talent. But there is equally a growing expectation that people will, to your point, stay relevant and actively seek out new opportunities to grow and develop and learn. So Mark, I might go to you next, just around what you think employers are looking for in terms of reviewing a CV and self-development. While they may have this fantastic experience from, you know, 5-10 years ago, what else might be important to would-be employers?
No, definitely. And I think the first thing I would say is always, and I know you'll agree with me on this one, is like, don't have gaps in your CV, you know, like really take ownership of the fact that you've been out of work, and put in a small paragraph there to explain what you were doing like that. Because at the end of the day, if you do get to an interview stage, you're going to be having that happening conversation anyways. And also, because we understand the system, sometimes if you don't fill in the gaps, you might not get to the interview stage because they might reject your CV because of the fact that you're not putting in all the details, and they're very busy and they've got 30 applications and need to pick 4 to send to the hiring manager. So definitely put all the information in there is very, very important. And I'd say really then it comes down to that extra educational pieces, you know, whether it's hobbies, interests, societies you're part of, put it all in, because as you were saying, like it's very important to show other things you've been doing and what you've been kind of doing to stay, if it's current or whether you're looking to get into a new industry or new area, very important to kind of show that in your CV, because the first thing they see is the window into you, and they make a decision to take you to an interview stage based off that piece of paper. So very, very important to have it all in there. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. And Jill, I suppose a good way to bridge that gap too on the CV might be a course which is Springboard funded. I think there's a lot of myths around a Trinity education and what that might mean. And we kind of dispel a number of them here, you know, with our kind of the Springboard model of funding, part-time. So you might speak a little bit around, you know, self-development and CV building opportunities we offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that's very important to us in the way that we structure the courses is the accessibility issue. All of our courses are run as a blended learning format. So you will have elements that are in person and you will have elements that are online. And to speak to Aisling's earlier point, that digital literacy, and we see a very diverse range of digital literacy. You'll have some people who come on the courses and they're absolute whizzes with technology, very, very comfortable, no problem whatsoever. And then we'll have people who find that very challenging, you know, and all of those skill levels are they're all completely valid. But part of the job that we have is to support and encourage people. You know, you are going to have a significant amount of your course would be online, but we're here to support that journey and to remind everybody that part of the challenges that you might be finding, you are developing your skill set inherently within that. So every time you're hopping online to attend a class, every time you're on a discussion board with your classmates, every time you're submitting and navigating a learning management system, that speaks to that digital literacy competency, you know, every time you do that. So it's again, it's that hidden skill development That's sort of the backbone of the courses that we run. We don't talk as much about those because, you know, when you're looking at people or people are looking to apply to courses, it's the innovation piece, and how do I learn to be more creative, and how do I learn to be an entrepreneur, and how do I learn how to build a business? And obviously they're all the very frontline skills that will be developed. But there is all of that hidden piece behind it that we pay very, very close attention to. So yeah, so all of the courses that we currently run, they're all run in the evenings. So they're accessible for people who will be working usual office hours. Again, like I said, in person, and a mixture of in person and online. We do have regional offerings, so it's not just all within Trinity, but even when we're running them outside Trinity, it's still very much tangent on site, you know, in those various different regions. It's something that's really important to say as well, is that these are, although they are part-time funded courses, they are fully registered Trinity courses. You do get a student card, you do get all the discounts that go with that. You're a fully registered student. So you kind of get the best of every world. And we're currently preparing for graduation at the end of this month. So all of our last year's cohort, we will be joining them up in Front Square, fully donned with caps and gowns to congratulate everybody on a wonderful job done. So yeah, it would be remiss not to say that the Trinity name is obviously very important, and we pride ourselves on the fact that we are upholding Trinity's great name and standards, but we are very cognizant of the fact that adult learners have particular needs and schedules and accessibility issues, and we speak to those as strongly as we can.
Excellent. And I'll tell you something you didn't mention there, which would be music to my ears, is no exams. So I think people might get a gentle sweat on when they think back to their school days and further study and am I up to task? But actually a lot of this work you can do at a time that suits you. And actually a lot of it is group work. So it is doable. It is doable.
And it's where we possibly can. We're replicating some of those sometimes challenging real world, you know, situations. Again, Ashley, you're speaking to senior leadership or navigating stakeholders. Those are parts of the assessments that we do. Brilliant. You know, and it's that, and it is sometimes supposed to be difficult because the real world is difficult, you know. And so again, what we do very carefully is we make sure that there is an appropriate amount of challenge and it's supported as well. So we feel very confident in saying that. Exactly. No exams, because exams aren't really pertinent to real world situations when you're talking about the future of work. But the assessments that we build will challenge you in similar ways to the workplace. And so you will develop really important practical skills.
Excellent. Thank you, Jill. And Aisling, when we speak around what employers want and reviewing a CV, you know, anecdotally, I would hear from our alums that by undergoing, you know, a challenge, whether it's volunteering or further study, and kind of making that commitment and showing that resolve. You know, a lot of our students who are just graduating studied with us during COVID, which is a remarkably challenging time to be at home on your own, presenting group work. But it's about showing initiative to future employers, and potentially the qualification doesn't matter that much at all in terms of its area, but it's the fact that you actively sought out a challenge and completed it.
Yeah, 100%. I think when it comes to any sort of further education or upskilling when you're working, it's always going to be so challenging, because where am I going to get the time is the first thing. I know when I was presented with the opportunity to study while I was working, I thought the same thing. And I think, you know, if you take a step back and assess the situation, which is something I do quite often, it is doable and it's so rewarding. And, you know, when you're presenting a CV to show that, you know, you were able to, okay, get a degree or get a course in X, Y, or Z, but actually you did assignments, you did group work, you navigated group work, which is always a tough thing, especially in third level sometimes. All of that stuff, you know, builds up your strengths. It also gives you great anecdotes for actual interviews when talking about strengths and weaknesses, because we always say have real life examples. That's how you become memorable. And like, I know I have lots of real life examples from my own college, so I will definitely be using them if I'm ever speaking to people in the future. But yeah, presenting kind of the story of your course and not just the outcome, essentially, is something I always try to tell people to do, because, you know, the journey is what got you there. It's only the last bit is, you know, your bit of paper and your big day out, which is great fun. But actually, it's the work that went into it, my God, is what really is going to make it stand out and matters most. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Just to add there, as a final point, I would just say, like, I think people realize because they're not in the recruitment industry, how often we can have conversations with hiring managers and they can be actually talking about those soft skills and talking about the fact that someone went back and did a course and all that too, because these are all very, very tangible things. Like, so it is discussed. It's not just a tick box exercise. They really do take it under consideration as well. So yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I'd love to know how you manage to balance further education while you work, because again, that would be a concern about people who want to hit refresh on their CV, on their skill set. So any advice, Mark, on how to strike that balance?
I don't know. I'm doing an MBA at the moment and it's a lot of work. Yeah, it's a lot of work. But look, I enjoy it, and it's an industry, an area that I like. So I do enjoy the course. I suppose have a passion for it, I would say. Have a passion for it, you know, definitely. And especially with the fact that springboard courses, you know, pick something that you like, maybe go to the open day, get a feel, talk to people involved and see what kind of courses suit you. Maybe you're not exactly definite on what you want to do or what you want to come back to do, but certainly after a day spent around course providers, you'll have a very good understanding then of what you might like to jump into, basically. Yeah.
Very good. And Jill, I think now again, selfishly, and obviously there's a bias here, but I suppose we kind of do have a course for everyone. Would you say that's true in terms of our suite of springboard courses? Certainly
we do. We absolutely do. You know, we have everything. So we have everything from climate entrepreneurship, we've got healthcare innovation, we've got creative and cultural entrepreneurship, and we have innovation and enterprise development would be our big four. So we do try and cater for a variety of different needs, and obviously climate and healthcare are two particularly big areas right now. We see an awful lot of government investment, you know, policy is emerging around both of those areas. So yes, and there's something for everybody. But even if you're not in one of those specialized areas, innovation and enterprise development is a wonderful course, both for people who are looking to build out their own enterprise, but really strong for entrepreneurs as well. You know, I think that that's a particular group of people who maybe don't get the focus and the spotlight that they should do. When we talk about people who are, I suppose to use vernacular, you know, movers and shakers within a company, what we really mean is the people, the entrepreneurs who are at the center, who are at the front of process change or being able to innovate new ideas or create, you know, strong culture. And it's the skill sets are ultimately very, very similar. Only one is slightly more externally focused in that somebody's looking to become an entrepreneur, and one is more internally focused. And so, yeah, there's something for everybody in there. And obviously, even if you don't strictly identify with any of those things, coming back to those, the development of the core soft skills underpins all of the courses. So there's always something there for everybody.
And an outlier that didn't make the cut there is workplace wellness, which I think our panel might be really interested in. Can you speak to us a bit?
Every time.
Yeah.
Yes. So workplace wellness is another great course. And in fact, talking about pivoting, one of our candidates who was on the very first workplace wellness course, which ran across COVID, he came very much from corporate background, and as a result of the network that he built on the course and the skills that he developed, he is now one of the senior leaders in the Healthy Ireland program. So completely pivoted, we're not away from corporate, but, you know, created and developed a niche. So the workplace wellness is another, yes, it's a wonderful course. And that's a great example of a really strong community. So our program director, he's got a community that he's very happy to bring to the table. And that applies to all of the courses. Again, that network piece is really strong. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Jill. Brilliant. And then on to my next question around returning to work. So we've spoken and touched upon the reasons why people might take a step back, you know, very worthy reasons, including care of family, etc. And even COVID has seen a lot of people take a step back. And unsurprisingly, the return then to work can be quite daunting to people. So in terms of allaying any concerns people might have here with us today around returning to work, Mark, might you have any tips on
I've got
ready yourself?
I've got a few, I suppose. I would say, first of all, I'd say, you know, maybe don't be thinking of the dream job straight away. Kind of think of it as a maybe a 3 or 4 year plan. And that might seem like that's too long a plan, but really what you're thinking of is like, okay, how do I get into the industry? I'm not speaking from an example. So obviously it could be in a very, very different industry from what you're currently in or what your previous experience is in. So you're looking at those, as we already spoke about, those transferable skills. So it may be a case that you can jump into an industry, but not exactly the job specifically you want to be in, but you're in the right industry now. So that's a real good, and we've seen that so many times in our industry where someone can go for a job in, say, a pharmaceutical company, and then a year later they're in the job they want, but they didn't get it initially, you know. So that's kind of very, very important as well. I would say sometimes, and it'd be controversial, but I would say don't use agencies sometimes when it comes to finding that job specifically. And the reason for that is not to say like, don't come to us for advice, and please do come to us for advice. It's more to say that like when we're brought into a system by a company, we're there to find people for them after they've already tried themselves. So there's already a kind of a fee attached to it, which means they're looking for a very specific person at that stage. What I'd be looking at is the companies, and sometimes smaller companies rather than multinationals are the ones that tend to be a bit more flexible when it kind of comes to those things as well. Like they're the ones that can really sit back and go like, okay, you know, we're not getting all the volume of CVs in because we're not one of the Googles or the Facebook or the Metas of the world. This person has really good transferable skills. They've got a really great attitude. So they went back and, you know, got their knowledge base up again. Let's give them a chance and see how they do. And that's more likely, I think, sometimes from my experience, anyways, anecdotally, in a smaller company and also maybe a smaller industry as well. Yeah.
Very good, very good. And Aisling, in terms of the kind of, well, you are the recruitment agency, so you're
not to be controversial. No, look, I can completely see Mark's point. Absolutely. What I would say, obviously, and of course I'm biased, is at least when I pivot for people to come back to work and maybe get into that industry, because that is 100% correct. If you want to get into pharmaceuticals, for example, let's try get into a pharmaceutical company, you might need to consider going in as an administrator and essentially working your way, you know, not necessarily working your way up the ladder, but getting in, getting to network around there, getting to know the different softwares and technologies they use, even how they speak. You know, you could be a corporate administrator for years, but want to move into healthcare and maybe don't have enough medical terminology. So you might want to get in on a lower end so you can then kind of upskill while on the job. I know from my own point of view, I recruit for a lot of temporary positions. So a lot of people who might want to come back or who are a bit scared of the workforce and what's like out there, I'll say, let's give you a go, you know, because the great thing about these roles is you can go in, give it a test out. It's kind of like try before you buy, make sure you like the company. And, you know, then I suppose the piece around getting you in on a permanent basis. But you might also go in, not like it, which is totally fine. And please be transparent with people because it's not every company is for everyone. Yeah. And then we can try something else, you know. So definitely it's a trial and error situation. But if you've got the passion, you know, you can definitely do it.
Excellent, thank you. And as we speak now, I'm reminded of one of our alums, Marie Clune, Jill, who you introduced me to, who studied innovation and enterprise development, and she did a masterful pivot and is now in Dell in product development, I think. Yes. So you might speak around some first-hand accounts of pivoting or what that journey looks like for a tangent student.
Yeah, I'm there. There's a few people who pivot. I just want to speak very quickly as well to work isn't necessarily always in industry. It's not necessarily in companies. We would have a number of students come on the courses who maybe didn't identify as entrepreneurs per se. I'm thinking people like Claire Cullen, you know, who's one of our poster children, who's wonderful. She was a great example of somebody who came onto one of our courses talking about accessibility during COVID. 3 children at home, you know, was able to fit in study hours around that because everything was being run online. And as a result of her personal experience, her literally her own life story, was able to develop a business out of that. So there's something there for people who maybe don't identify themselves or perhaps see themselves as being, you know, they want to go into industry per se, that there's other opportunities as well. We would have a number of people who've maybe done coaching courses, you know, who want to work for themselves, but who don't know how to do that. How do you create your own job? How do you make that, you know, working life for yourself? And that is, there's perhaps not as many routes available for people who want to do that. So that's something that our courses offer too. So yeah, we would have, I'm on the spot now, so I'm struggling to think of a couple of names, but we would, yeah, it's something that we would hear about quite frequently. You know, some of our alumni would get in touch with us, or we'd hear through the grapevine. I'm thinking about some people as well who are, particularly in the creative and cultural course, people again who identify themselves as being part of the creative and cultural industries, but perhaps don't know how to create roles out of that. We have people who've set up businesses, so coffee shops, and we've had people who've set up restaurants. We've also had people who are doing the food carts, you know, and who are kind of really making that wonderful piece where you kind of combine passion in life with career and make something wonderful out of it, you know, and that's fantastic. I suppose that's my very rambling and roundabout way of saying that outcomes for so many of our students, there really is, and Hazel, you said it earlier, there's no one student, no type of student, and there's no one type of outcome either. So if anybody is listening to this going, oh, I don't know if I fit in, you do, because there are so many, there are endless opportunities that we haven't discovered in our students yet. And I would say that there is, if you want to be here and you want to do it, there is spaces available, and we'd love to be on that journey with you.
Excellent. And just on that, we have a whole host of alumni panel discussions available to watch back on our YouTube channel, where we have everyone from Marie in product development in Dell to student Dominic, who did climate entrepreneurship with us and it works in the IDA sustainability team. We have everyone and anyone across all of our courses. Yeah. So I would invite you to watch those back, should you be interested in one of our courses more specifically. So finally, I'll go around the panel and ask for your wildcard piece of advice, or your top piece of advice for people who say 2023 is my year to shake up my career. Aisling.
Be fearless and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. My parents are my advisors in life, and they always say, give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? And it's actually something I brought through my entire professional career. What's the worst that can happen? Someone might turn you down, but let's be honest, every rejection is an opportunity. Ask why, get feedback, put yourself out there, and just try your best. That's all you can do.
Excellent. As my sister says, rejection is a redirection.
There you go.
Sometimes it's easier to hear than, you know, other days. But anyway, and Mark, what's your tip?
I would definitely be saying along the same lines, fail fast and often, like, you know, just try things out. I mean, it seems like the courses here are very set up for more of like it's kind of a summarization, I suppose, like that in certain terms. Like, it's not too specific, which means that any one of the courses might engage people's interest to the point where they've done it now, and then they can look to do something else after, whether it's a degree or a master's, whatever they decide to do. I think for myself, from the recruitment point of view, I always say, you know, chance, go for it, apply to jobs. I always tell my friends when they come to me for recruitment advice, whenever that is, I suppose, is always the litmus test is, are you getting interviews? Okay, because if you're getting interviews, you're so close. You know, they see something in your CV, they like what they see, and then you're getting the interview and you're selling yourself. You're down to the top, maybe 3 or 4 people at that stage from, we don't know how many, it could be hundreds. So I'd say litmus test the market always. If you're not getting interviews, okay, what am I doing wrong? Is it the education piece? Is it the fact that I'm looking too far ahead of my dream job, but maybe I should be going back a few tracks? That would be my tangible piece of advice, I suppose, for anyone listening. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Jill.
Yeah, I think it's education courses and the workforce, or being in the workplace, they're not mutually exclusive. That especially on courses like this, which are designed to develop people for the future of work, education very often, and challenges that you'll find in the classroom, they very often mirror what potentially will happen in real life. So just know that if you're thinking about doing a course, doing education, I would urge people not to think of it's a sidetrack. It's not, it's an alternative, and it complements your career trajectory, because the things that it's not just about the things that you learn in the classroom in terms of what you're listening to from the lecture. It's also about how you're interacting with other people, how you're responding to stressful situations, how you're developing your presentation skills every time you get up to talk to the class, that everything you're doing in the classroom and around the classroom has direct impact into your career. So embrace it. And even when it gets tough, just know that it will absolutely be worth it.
Growth is never easy.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for joining us here today in Tangent live on site.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for tuning in to today's session. If you'd like to know more about our courses, you can find all of the information about our opportunities on tcg.ie/tangent. And I would invite you to express your interest in any one of our courses, and we'll be in touch about future information sessions. So I'd like to thank Mark from Rent to Recruiter. Thank you for joining us. Aisling from CPL, and our very own Jill from Tangent. Thank you.
Thank you.